As an introduction to this particular episode, I'm going to make a distinction between just your normal run-of-the-mill atheist to anti-theists. The difference is anti-theists are the kind of people who hate the Bible so much they are willing to take its own contents completely out of context to display how barbaric it supposedly is. The passage we are going to explore today is used by many such anti-theists to unilaterally declare that the Bible condones the raping of women. I'm going to share that story with you and show how not only does it BTFO that nonsense, but actually holds the framework that Christian nations should appeal to when confronted with invading ideologies and immoral practices like the grooming gangs in the UK. Let's begin, guys. Now, the chapters we will be looking at are the Book of Judges 19 and 20 respectively. In chapter 19, we are told a story about a Levite priest who sends his new wife out to be raped by a gang of Belialites, also known as the sons of Belial. At first glance, we are expected to believe that this is a desired or normal outcome, despite it going against all Levitical law and custom, which a Levite priest is of course knowledgeable of. But before we even consider any of that, chapter 19 itself begins with a story of this Levite priest redeeming his new bride. This was in fact their honeymoon journey back to his homeland. It is full of being detained by the bride's father, lavishing upon the new couple food, drink, and essentially demanding the joy of their company. We are told of the priest redeeming his wife from a life of prostitution and of the tender love he has for his wife and his steps of reconciliation towards her. The chapter continues as the Levite insists on traveling until he comes to a city of Israel rather than a quote-unquote city of a stranger. They make their way into a city run by the tribe of Benjamin, a city of his people, fellow Israelites, a place where he and his traditions and customs are supposed to be revered, or at least the norm. However, after finally finding refuge in a home of another man of his faith, he is beset by a mob of these sons of Belial. To avoid any confusion, these sons of Belial are pagan worshippers of Baal. They are heathens who were supposed to be destroyed by the Benjaminites. They were not Israelites. They did not observe the laws of God, nor did they seem to have any respect for it. They had, in fact, contrary to the laws of God, come to demand the privilege of sodomizing this Levite priest. This is where the owner of the house offers his daughter and the priest's new wife in the Levite priest's stead. Mind you, this was a mob, and they were not leaving without something to satiate them. Our only conception of such a thing is the recent looting and rioting in the U.S. today, where people are unceremoniously surrounded and having the demands made of them. And in the ancient world with such a mob, which was before the advent of gunpowder, these mobs had to be dealt with pragmatically. So the priest was rather compelled to offer his new bride to essentially satiate them. They took her, and they took her alone, and they raped and abused her all night. They abused her so horribly that when they let her go, she arrived at the house only to fall dead at the doorstep, where this Levite priest had been welcomed in to stay for the night. Again, to be perfectly clear, the priest had no intention of giving away his beloved new wife to an angry mob. He had loved her enough to be reconciled with her. He celebrated his marriage to her with her father's family. He had made it a point to travel to a city of his own people with the intention of being safe from such barbarism, which is unlawful among his own people. He had an expectation when he went to a city of Israel that was not obviously upheld. It was not tradition or custom that inclined him to give up his wife. It was force that compelled him to do so, and it was a force he was powerless to repel. As you continue in the chapter, we learn that the priest takes the body of his bride home and cuts her up into 12 pieces and sends them throughout all of Israel. So severe was the torment upon this woman that each piece of itself was sufficient to indicate the amount of torment she had endured by these sons of Belial. That summarizes chapter 19, and in the next section, the next chapter, chapter 20, we'll cover the consequences of this action. And we will see there how the God of the Bible feels about the rape and torture of women, among other things. Now, it is at the start of chapter 20 where all of Israel's leaders, the elders of their tribes and what have you, they all gather at a city called Mizpah to ask why they all got this bizarre mail order in the form of these 12 pieces. The Levite priest then recounts in this chapter his story and his side of it rather accurately with, quote, "I came into Gibeah that belongeth to Benjamin, I and my bride, to lodge. And the men of Gibeah rose against me, and beset the house round about upon me by night, and thought to have slain me, and my bride have they forced that she is dead." That's a fairly accurate summarization of what happened. Israel then determines to go to war against Gibeah, that city of Benjamin. They march as one to the city, and they make a rather reasonable request of Benjamin. They say, quote, "What wickedness is this that is done among you? Now therefore deliver us the men, the children of Belial, which are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death, and put away evil from Israel." End quote. This is an easy way out. This was a reasonable solution. But for whatever reason, the entire tribe of Benjamin refuses, and all the rest of the tribe of Benjamin gather from all the rest of their cities to the city of Gibeah to defend it and the heathen within it. What is particular is that Israel actually brings out the Ark of the Covenant to this battle. They have it among them so that they can have sort of a spiritual connection to assist in this scenario. And it's through this medium that in this story, it is God himself who orders them to follow through and attack the city. They actually, before finally going through with the battle plan, approach the ark and are commanded by God to follow through with this attack. This wasn't just something that, yes, they rushed to do it because of the immense travesty and horror of it all. But when they got there, they stopped and said, "Hey, let's ask if we actually want to do this." And God, through the ark, says, "Yeah, I want you to destroy the city." And so they do. And Israel loses. They lose every fighter they send against the city. They lost 22,000 men in that fight. They also begin to realize that in spite of all that has happened, not only have their own died, but they are attacking one of their own fellow tribes. So they go to ask God again if they are supposed to attack the city. He commands them to attack it again. And they fail. This time they lose 18,000 men. And again, with great reluctance, they approach God again. They ask, quote, "Shall I again go out to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother, or shall I cease?" And the Lord said, "Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into thine hand." Israel truly might have been starting to regret this decision, but the command was to attack again. They achieved victory, this time by drawing the Benjaminites out of the city. What they did is they did an attack and then a feint back to draw them out of the city, while smaller forces that laid in wait to invade and burn the city from the inside. While the city burned, and the Benjaminites realized that the city is in fact burning, Israel's forces from inside the city departed and rejoined the battle at the rear, while more of the Israelites came in at the front. This surrounded and decimated all but 600 of the Benjaminite soldiers. The city was ravaged, as well as every single other Benjaminite city. Every Benjaminite city was burned, and every man and beast in those cities were slain. And so we will, in this next section, go over exactly what this means. And of course, what it means is that if you get through these chapters and your immediate impression is that God condones the raping of women, you might need a different Bible. Perhaps you might need to get your eyes checked. Also, if that doesn't work, I recommend a lobotomy that might be required to upgrade your cranial logitator. It is clear by God's direct involvement in this scenario, in this story, through the canon that is given, precisely how strongly he is against the rape of women in his society, even in spite of Israel's later reluctance to continue the fight. It should, however, give us pause to ask ourselves a few questions about the Benjaminites themselves, the city of Gibeah, and the absolute state thereof. How and why were the Baulites living in safety within a city of Benjamin? Perhaps it is because the tribe of Benjamin didn't want to oppress the true natives of the native city. Maybe the Baulites called them intolerant, racists, or bigots. It's possible. Or was it perhaps because Benjamin had grown comfortable living with a culture that did not want to conform to their standards? Perhaps Benjamin felt it was too tyrannical to demand the Baulites stop their ways, leave the city, or be killed for not living up to the Israelite Benjaminite order that they were supposed to be living under. Perhaps it was multicultural tolerance that caused the tribe of Benjamin to fall so far from grace that even when given the chance to save themselves, they chose to die rather than infringe upon the existence of evil within their own walls. Make no mistake, that this was a common practice among the Baulites, that this was a flourishing aspect, absolutely flourishing aspect of the Baulite faith. Roving bands of angry mobs seeking whatever new piece of flesh they could satisfy themselves with was a common practice. The Benjaminites were in fact peak proponents of religious freedom for oppressed minorities, don't you see? But how did exactly Benjamin grow so callous that they would permit such a thing? Did they themselves adopt such practices? We may never truly know. There is another aspect to this example that deserves highlighting, however, and that is the dogged determination which the Lord demanded of Israel to execute and remove this evil from among them. This is a principled move. This was a fight that not only needed to be fought, it was a fight that needed to be won. Regardless of the losses, no matter how many times the battle had to be waged, Israel, in spite of showing clear signs of weary and demoralization, was commanded to finish the job. It was a task that seemed too hard, with a price that seemed far too high, and at the cost of one's own kinship. That was the price included in them following these orders from their divine source. This was the ultimate test of faithfulness to the Lord's way of life. It was a testament to the importance of that way of life. And if I may draw it back and compare it to our situation today, would to God the UK were Christian enough to follow its example. And would to God we would all fight for the Western values that have granted us the power and privileges we enjoy today with that same exact determination. That is my hope that we take from these chapters, and I hope that we're able to see that these are not tales merely to oppress and to divide one another. These are the tools by which societies need to unite themselves in the face of those things that do, in fact, internally divide them. That is all. As always, guys, stay carnal. Bye.